Everybody, Invisiblekatana here with my review for Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. There will of course be spoilers. I don't know why I said Quantumania like that. Quantumania. Anyway, there will be spoilers in the second half of this review, so don't worry about that. I'll let you guys know when we get to that. Kicking things off, I seem to like it a lot more than most people did, based on the reviews that it's been getting. Some of the reviews I've watched, I think Rotten Tomatoes, it's at like 47 or something like that, or it might be I think it was 57 or somewhere in the 50s, and it went down. I think it was like maybe 54 and went down to 47. I like the movie personally. When I was watching it, I was like, I enjoy this. I thought it was a fun. I think for me personally, I don't know. I guess it doesn't really matter, but you know, everybody's different. For me, it was like I thought this was really good because Ant-Man has always been like the side movie where it's like, oh, you know, it's silly, it's funny, it's fun, and you kind of go through, and then there's a villain, and you kind of go through, and the villain's defeated or whatever. And obviously, it was different with this, where it's like obviously Kang is coming into play. And it was like, all right, well, how's that going to work out? Is it going to be, it seems like it was going to be super serious based on the trailers alone. And it was, you know, when he's on scene, it's definitely serious. So it was like, all right, going through, it starts off fairly normal because obviously they're not in the quantum realm just yet. So it starts off very classic Ant-Man style. And then it goes into the quantum realm and it changes up. And I still enjoyed it as it was going through, because for me, it was just like, okay, it's still funny, silly Ant-Man. It's just not on Earth like it was before. It's just in a crazy, you know, quantum CG world. And I was still enjoying it. And there are a couple things that happened here and there where I was like, you know, and even when this, you know, no influence, it just happened to be one of those things where even when I heard it in other reviews, I was like, yeah, I do agree on that. Like, there's just some stuff that happens in this. Mostly characters, particularly one titular character, and how they just don't really do much in the movie. There are like, there's, I guess you could say 5 characters. So we have Ant-Man, we have Wasp, and then we have original Ant-Man, original Wasp, and then we have Cassie, I believe is Scott's daughter. So that's 5 characters. And then of course you have the villain. So you got 5 heroes. They split them in the teams of 2, just doing like the simple thing where it's like, all right, everyone can't be together the whole time. They have to find each other. And then you get the story from 2 different perspectives. And in one regard, that's really cool. They do some stuff that's really nice, and you know, they hold out story beats because they switch back and forth, and it's like, okay, you know, that's kind of a classic thing in storytelling. And then they also do another classic thing where they hold out on some story beats for a dumb reason, and that I'll get into with spoilers. And I was like, even when I was watching it, I was like, it's kind of annoying. I always hate when characters do this specific thing that they had the character do, because it's always one thing when they do it before stuff is crazy. It's like, you know, I don't want to talk about this, I don't want to do this, I don't want to do that. And it's like, okay, something happened, cool. Once you're in it, you can't do that anymore. You can't just be like, I just don't want to talk about it. Like, I just don't. It's like, you're kind of getting us killed. Plain and simple. It's like, you can't be in war and be like, I just don't like talking about the war and how I have information that could help the war. I just don't. It was bad information. It made me sad. It's like, well, we'll be dead, so you want to open your mouth or something? Like, they did that in this movie, and it was definitely like, yeah, that's kind of weird. Like, they've already gone through like 2 full beats and the character was still doing this, and it was like, that's dumb. That's not a good thing to do. And that was definitely my main thing with the film, where I was like, yeah, that kind of bugs me. And then other characters, honestly, it's an Ant-Man movie. It's not Ant-Man and the Wasp. I can just tell you that. It's Ant-Man and his daughter's in it, and those are the 2 main characters, and then there's Kang. Like, everyone else is kind of in it. I think Janet actually has more to do than Hope does. 100%. I don't know why I said think. 100%. If there's an Ant-Man and Wasp, it's the original Wasp. So technically they're right. It is Ant-Man and the Wasp, but it's not the Wasp you want to see, where it's like, oh, it's Hope doing her thing. She's in the costume in the movie, but it's like, she's got like 2 actual moments. But Janet does like all the actual stuff in the story that actually progresses things, or, you know, at least gives us really big information. So they have characters where it's just like, they don't get to do much. Hank basically gets to do nothing until like the end of the film. And it was just like, all right, that is the thing that I think feels weird. I think I would have preferred they just didn't have the characters in it. Like, that actually would have been a really cool way to do it. It obviously would have taken out like 2 of the main characters, but if Hope just wasn't in the movie and it literally was like current Ant-Man and former Wasp, and that was how they played with the title, I think it honestly would have been a better film. I think they could have just done it better that way. If it wasn't all the characters together, it was just Ant-Man and his daughter, and then Janet ends up being sent in by herself, or maybe just one of the characters, instead of it being like the whole Pym family where it's Janet, Hank, and Hope. maybe just do Janet. I mean, in all honesty, they did need Hank, so they could have easily left him out, and it could have just been like a mother-daughter adventure on one half and then a father-daughter adventure on the other half. I think that actually would have worked a lot better. But at the same time, Hank doesn't do anything in this movie, so I guess it would have been the same movie. Weird to say, but technically it probably would have cut out like 3 minutes of dialogue. He doesn't have much, as far as like once they get through to the quantum realm, it probably wouldn't have cut that much dialogue, admittedly. So that was definitely like the biggest issue with the whole film for me, where it was just like they definitely don't utilize the characters as much as I would like, and they don't balance it out well enough. It was basically like everything that should have gone to Hope, and her being a titular character was like, just we'll give it to her mom. We didn't do much with her, so we'll like, and obviously they're in the area that she has the most experience in, we'll give it all to her. And it's like, well, that's a little too much for her when you have like the current Wasp, she is, I guess, the girlfriend. I don't think they're married. I don't know what their deal is. I don't think they ever explain that. I don't think they're married. I think that's still technically they're just boyfriend and girlfriend, but obviously they're together. I don't know if they're married. But it's like, it just felt weird, where it was like the characters around Janet don't get to do enough. And this is the former Ant-Man and the current Wasp, who have way bigger roles in both the other films. Like obviously in the first film, and she wasn't even a Wasp in that. Hope has like, she's literally one of the main characters, and same thing in the second one, she becomes the Wasp. And it was just like, it's weird how little she gets in her own film, which, like I said, if they were actually playing on the title, it would totally work, because it'd be like, oh, they're talking about the old Wasp, and you don't see as much of Hope, or maybe she could have been off separately doing another third storyline. I don't know how it could have worked, but just the way they handled it was like, it was necessary, but at the same time, there are moments where it's just like, I feel like they could have just done more for the other two characters that are with Janet. Like they could feel more important, especially one actually being the current Wasp, being the actual superhero. So, excuse me, I think that was my main gripe with the entire film. But even with that being an issue, overall, I still enjoyed what I got personally. But I can, it's one of those movies where I'm like, I enjoyed it. I feel like I always enjoy stuff more than most people do, unless it's Batman v Superman, because I happen to hate that movie. But other than that, I feel like I always like movies way more than everybody else does, when they're just like, this sucked and that sucked. Because like, I've heard people say like, the MCU magic is gone. I've heard people say like, it's just like, they don't care anymore. And I was just like, I actually was like, I enjoyed this. I had a great time with it personally, especially as the story went along. And admittedly, I think just like everybody else, that was because of the villain. It was because of Kang, because you have the funny moments, which are funny. They have some really funny jokes. And there's one particular thing that I'm avoiding because technically it's in the trailers, but some people still might not know about it. So I'll talk about that in spoilers, but they have some great jokes. But when Kang is on, it's serious and it's fantastic. And they do something interesting with Kang as well that I'm also not 100% happy with either. I'll be totally honest about that. So we'll see what happens there. And obviously that'll be in spoilers. But overall, I personally enjoyed the movie. I definitely think it's worth checking out. Admittedly, I don't think I've seen any of the Marvel movies twice, except for like Infinity War and Endgame, which is crazy because there's lots of other movies that I've really enjoyed. I wanted to see Civil War twice really bad, and I never did. My one experience with Civil War in theaters was being in like the third row, and I hated it because I was just like this the whole time, and I really wanted to see that movie a second time in theaters, and I never did, but I love Civil War. So yeah, for me saying I won't see it again doesn't really mean much, but I think it's worth checking out. I think it was a pretty fun one. It obviously introduces Kang and the concept of that. Once again, with the ending of what they do with, like starting off the storyline of Kang as part of the MCU, I'm curious where it's going, because I can't say it was my favorite choice 100% based on just little bits and pieces here of actual dialogue that they did, which they didn't have to do, and it still could have been like, it's kind of something else. It's still this or that. And they were definitively like, it is this thing, and that thing is over. And I was like, okay, that's interesting. That's an interesting choice. So we'll see what happens. They could still easily rewrite it based on who Kang is, technically. But we'll see what happens. So that's everything as far as non-spoilers. I think check it out. I still think it was a fun movie. Action was good, but I would say it was just, I really said the action was kind of just decent. I enjoyed the scenes because it was more so that they were intense scenes and not that the action was actually really cool. And even then it was like, probably that was only like towards the end of the film where it was like the action sequences were actually like intense. And then like the whole ending spectacle, I think I just enjoyed overall. But I'd say check it out. I think it was fun. I definitely would say I do like it more than pretty much everybody else right now. But we'll see what happens in the end, how people feel about it. But so far it's been the weekend, and it is what it is. But getting into full on spoilers now, and I'll make this super quick because I'm already doing I already done 10 minutes on non-spoilers, so I'll make the spoilers quick. We have to start off because obviously I left him out. MODOK. Like most people, let's be honest, most people, I didn't care about MODOK. Let's face it, I didn't care about MODOK in general because it's MODOK. I did like the Hulu show. It was unfortunate that got canceled. I thought it was really funny. And then we had MODOK in here, and I was like, okay, let's see how this goes. Looked weird. I wasn't super bothered by it. I understand 100% why people were, because it really was just they stretched his face out, and then it was like he had the actual mask, like they would do the gold mask, and I was like, it's not like he's doing the ultimate performance where it's like we have to show the actor's face. Like, it's just his face stretched out. He could have had the mask on like 99% of the time, and it would have been perfect. Like it was just a crazy go. They could have put like more details in it, and I think that's probably a part of why. Because when he would put the whole mask down, it was like, oh, that's like the comic, accurate MODOK. It was just solid gold, and they didn't have any extra colors to kind of give it a real looking face. And it was kind of like, yeah, I could see like it will start to look weird a little bit where it's just solid gold and just reflections on it. And I feel like that was a big part of why they didn't do it, because they made it just solid gold. Could be wrong. I don't do VFX or anything like that, but that's how I saw it. As soon as they did it the very first time, I was like, that being gold 100% of the time and ultra reflective, it's so because it would just mess up scenes where it's like you have to have light from the quantum realm all around them reflecting off of this gold surface, and it's like that would totally mess some stuff up. It would be so much work to do that accurately. So I feel like that's why they did it, but I'm like, I would have liked it. I think I still would have preferred it. Maybe just make it muted where it doesn't have reflections, or make it matte or something. I don't know, but I was like, I love when he put the full shield on. I was like, that's MODOK, that's what he looks like. And then most of the time he lifted it up and it was Darren, and great jokes with it. Everyone coming in and constantly being like Darren, and like it was actually funny, but it 100%, it has to be even further. Let's face it, even further than Thor. This has to be as far away as they've ever gotten from a comic character. I could be wrong, because I'm sure there's some side character that I don't even remember that showed up in something, and it was just like they literally made him a throwaway character in half a second. I know that's happened. They have a million references, but this has to be one of the furthest interpretations from the source comic material. And it was like, wow, MODOK is not the same MODOK. It fit within the storyline of the MCU, but it was like, oh, that's interesting. Like he really is just like kind of funny and a joke, and also not that cool. The whole point is like he's the hunter killer, and I was like, that's MODOK. He comes in, he wipes everybody out. The first scene was amazing, and I was like, that's cool. That is MODOK. He comes in, he is the servant of Kang. He's the assassin. Fantastic. It's MODOK. Like he did what he's his literal name, the whole acronym. He did that first sequence. And then after that, it's just jokes, and he does not win like a single fight. I don't think he hits a single other person after that. But like, honestly, I could be wrong, but after that opening sequence, I genuinely don't think he does another hit throughout the entire film, because he chases Cassie down, but he doesn't kill anyone along the way as he's chasing her, unless I'm mistaken. And he doesn't actually get her, because she's like, all right, I hope this works. And she goes giant, punches him in the face, and then just slams around. Because other than that, I think she dodged all of his other moves, and that was it. So I don't think he literally does a single hit outside of his entrance in the film. And there you go. That's not really MODOK. He's not exactly killing like the K would suggest. So he did in the first sequence, and it was fantastic. And then it was all jokes after that. And I'm like, they could easily do a mix of both. Like he easily could have been the tortured right hand of Kang, and they could have made that work where he still did it. And then it was like, all right, I'm now faced with, the people that kind of sent me here. And that's, I mean, technically that's what makes him change anyway. Like, ultimately getting down to the point of Cassie being like, don't be a dick. That was a funny sequence. And he's like, it's too late. I'm such a dick. Like, it was a funny sequence. His death sequence was hilarious. Or it was like, you're always a brother to me. Like, they just threw stuff in that was like, it was so left field. Even the characters had to be like, I was a brother. Like, we started off not liking each other. So that was funny. And then be like, at least I got to die in an Avenger. And it's like, yes, you did. And then like after he dies, it's like, today's been strange. Like, it was good. Like, that whole segment was absolutely hilarious, but it was super far from MODOK. But for their version of MODOK, it definitely fit in line with the way they handled it. And I feel like even with him being tortured, they could have shown that a little bit more. They had the first sequence where Kang, I almost said Krang, but Kang was he hits him up against the wall. Like, don't speak when I'm in the room. And I was like, once again, Kang just badass. That was an amazing sequence, and it shows how irrelevant MODOK truly is. And he comes back at the end where it's like, my name is Darren, and he kind of sacrifices himself, I guess, to make sure that Kang gets taken down. But they don't even play up on that because he doesn't call him MODOK at all in the whole film. I don't think he ever once even says anything to him outside of go here. He doesn't call him by name. He doesn't call him MODOK. He doesn't call him like the monster or the hunter. He doesn't say any of that outside of, I think when he was speaking to Janet, it was like, I sent the hunter. And that was it. And I think actually someone else said that. I think that was Bill Murray's character that said that. Another random thing in this film where it was like, they could have got rid of that. It didn't really make much difference. I think that was just a cameo moment. But yeah, MODOK was definitely interesting. Funny lines for sure, but super far from MODOK, which is unfortunate because the entrance of him was perfect MODOK. And that's what sucked. And I was like, this is MODOK. It's amazing. And then it was just all jokes after that. And like I said, I'm almost certain he does not do a single hit after that introduction, and it's all jokes after that 100%. So there's that. But final thing, Kang. He was Kang the Conqueror. Now they do the Council of Kangs at the end, which I thought was interesting, because it's like with them going into that, it's like, does that mean that they're gonna reference once they hit Fantastic Four? It's like, oh, the Council of Kangs, Reed Richards, he sees this, and it's like, maybe there's a thing like that for my people, for me as Reed Richards, and that's how we get the Council of Reeds. So we get the antithesis of the Council of Kangs, who are all like the ultimate villains, and then we have Reed, a good guy. I can't say the ultimate good guy. Let's face it. I guess our version of him would be the ultimate good guy, but obviously, if you read the comics, you know why I can't say like the ultimate good guy, Reed Richards. I guess even it depends what they do in the movie. So I guess even that full MCU, Reed Richards, I guess ain't 100% like the ultimate good guy. But Council of Reed. So it's like, okay, that's probably what they're leading to. We got Ramatut, we got Immortus. I don't know if the future version of him with like the cybernetic body is just supposed to be like basically just Kang as he grew up as an adult in the actual future, because that's all I could think of. I don't remember him having an actual future counterpart name in the comics. So we got Ramatut, we got Immortus, both of which Ramatut I kind of hate. I was like, I don't know why they gave him like the cybernetic arm. I was like, why couldn't he just be the actual Egyptian version of when he was Ramatut? But instead of having like, he lost an arm and now he has like a cybernetic arm. And then I think Immortus was perfectly fine. He just looked like Immortus and he had like the crazy Fu Manchu. And I was like, boy, that doesn't, it didn't really translate as well. And I was almost like, I wish they didn't do the blue on him. And it was just like, because in the comics, he just seems like he's just white. Like he's not blue, at least not that I can remember. I don't ever remember seeing him blue as Immortus. So I wish they just had him black, like just leave his face, his skin as it is. And like you could do, actually, no, he shouldn't have been blue at all during that sequence, because none of those, like that's the whole point. Like when he's Kang the Conqueror, that's when he's blue. So when he's everyone else, he's just his skin tone. So I wish they kind of left that alone, because he was that when he was Ramatut, it was just his skin tone. So I was like, I wish they did that for Immortus, because it looked weird, because it looked like it was actual paint. It wasn't the CG like it was through most of the movie when he was like in his Conqueror outfit. It was like a blue CG film over him. And I was like, oh, that looks sick. Like, when they would do it, it looked amazing. But when he was just blue as Immortus, it looked like it was just blue paint on him. And I was like, it almost feels weird because I can tell it's real paint compared to when it was the CG blue. And it made it look worse, which is a shame to say that because I should love practical. But I think I was just so used to being like, it was just the blue laser effect over him that it just looked weird when I was like, that's clearly just actual blue paint. And if it wasn't, it really looked real. So that's an amazing bit of VFX, but it just looked like actual blue paint on him. And I was like, he should have just been his skin tone, not even just for comic accuracy. I just think it looked better in general if it was just like his actual skin tone. And they couldn't have done it to be like, oh, people will be confused. It's like, it's the same actor. We'll know it's Kang. We don't need him to be blue to be like, oh, it's him. So I thought that was weird. The cybernetic arm on Ramatut, I didn't think made any sense. The blue on Immortus was weird. Like I said, the cybernetic thing was just him being cybernetic. He had a weird voice when he was the cybernetic version. I will say, if I'm just throwing out complaints for all three versions, that's definitely the one for that. It was like a weird raspy thing. And I was like, I don't particularly like that, but we'll see what happens. There's our first post-credit sequence. They killed like the worst of the worst, which that's the thing I don't like. It was like, so that is just Kang the Conqueror. Then what is the effing point of all the other Kangs? Like I'm sure they'll call them Kang the Conqueror, and maybe there'll be another one that's kind of close to the guy who was exiled that was Kang the Conqueror. But it does seem a little weird to me where they were like, nope, it's Kang the Conqueror. He could have just been Kang, but also he's a time traveler. Every version of Kang could be Kang the Conqueror. So it's one of those weird things where it's like they make it seem like he was the worst of the worst, and that's why he was exiled, because he was going to wipe out everything. And then when he's dead, it's like, well, then you guys aren't as cool. But I'm sure they will be. I'm sure it'll still be fun and entertaining. But it's definitely like, well, I want like the baddest of the bad, and he's gone. Sort of. He could easily come back. They did a weird thing where it's like, technically he got like pulled into what was already a time source to travel throughout all space and time. So it's like, yeah, he died, but did he really die? Because that, like, the whole point of that machine is that it's like allows you to, you know, power up a ship that allows you to travel anywhere. So it's like instantaneous, just like, he went through and was trapped for like a millennia. You know, the ants got trapped. They lived a million lives in the movie. Kang can come back. Kang the Conqueror can come back. But we'll see what happens. It was definitely weird, though, that they were like, Kang the Conqueror, the worst of the worst, the one who got exiled. We beat him, and now the other ones are going to come out because it's like, well, now that they beat one of us, they're going to screw up what we've been trying to do, which I would assume was the same thing as the others. But, you know, if you go back to Loki, like the one above all, or no, that's a totally different character. Whatever his name was in Loki, it was like, you know, I had to do this specific thing so that they wouldn't start branching out and taking over other universes. But like, that's what all of them do. So I'm super confused how he was just the worst. I guess because he didn't want to work with them, he was the worst. So I guess we'll see what ends up happening. Maybe them working together, they will still ultimately combine to be just as terrifying as he was in this film, just on his own. But ultimately, we shall see. We'll love to know your thoughts on it. So in general, just where are we headed with Kang? I would love to know your thoughts on that. Also, for anyone who's interested, The Marvels was unfortunately delayed to November. I think it was supposed to be like July or something. Recently got delayed, so that's unfortunate. I was actually looking forward to that. Now, once I found out all three of them were going to be in it, I was like, I'm way more excited for that than just like Captain Marvel 2 by herself. I was like, all right, now it's all three. I'm definitely hyped for that movie, so I'm looking forward to that. But we'll love to know your thoughts on Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. Even though it's really just Ant-Man and his daughter, and definitely funny. Definitely funny. The action was good. Kang beating up Scott at the end, fantastic. Like, that was brutal. I forgot this. I'm already at 20 minutes, but I'm gonna say it now. I wish they killed him. I wish Scott died. And if he didn't die, when he didn't die, I was like, okay, he didn't die, but Hope had to come back to save him. And they were both trapped. And I was like, that's great. That's like a really cool Dark Heroes ending where they technically do it. And it's like, all right, now we have to live our lives out here. And they could have solved it, you know, at any point in the future. They could have easily been like, dang, my heat is really kicking up right now. All right. I normally don't do cuts, but normally I'm not stupid enough to leave my heat on either. So I wish he died. At first, while I was watching, I was like, all right, if he dies, totally fine with that. It's an epic heroic ending. And then he won. They beat Kang. And then the portal closed. And I was like, bittersweet ending where they both get trapped in there. They at least get to be happy together, so no one is really alone. And despite Cassie losing her father, it leads her off to be like, all right, I wanted to be a hero. That was like her whole thing. She had the suit. She started fighting and all that at the end. Sends her off to be a young Avenger. Perfect setup. Really easy. It's like, I lost my dad, but he was a hero. I want to keep being a hero. I'm going to take his place. I think her name is like Stinger or something in the comics. Would have been sweet. And then it was like, oh man, you know, kind of a bittersweet ending. And then it was like, nah, the portal opens right back up. It was a couple of days, you know, they were there for a couple of minutes, but it was a couple of days or a couple of weeks or whatever. Because I think the time was like 5 hours was the 5 years. So then being there a couple of minutes was like, you know, a couple of days. She fixed it up, opened the portal, let's go home. It was like, yeah. I was like, oh, well, it was just like that whole scene was pointless to me then, because it was like, oh, they're not going to die. They're going to be trapped. But they did something good. They helped liberate an entire like subatomic dimension. And so now they get to be, they're there as good people. And then it just opened up. It was like, all right, let's head on out. And I was like, oh, well, why'd they even close the portal? What was the point of that? There was like, you just did it for no good reason. And it was like, well, it just felt so dumb to me to even have that moment where they make you think this is going to happen. And then they just open the portal and it's like, all right, let's go home. Yeah. And I'm like, cool. And I guess technically speaking, it does make sense, because if you go with the time dilation and all that, she did technically just fix the machine, and that was all there was to it. But it was just like, in the moment, you just feel like, oh, that's super cheap. Like, because why close it at all? Just, they beat them. Let's go. but they didn't do that. So I definitely felt like that was a little cheap. I was like, you didn't kill him, you didn't trap him. It just went back to how it was at the end. Could have ended on another good moment too, admittedly, if they ended on the epic dark ending where he was like, hold on, he said if we kill him, even worse stuff is gonna happen. Did I just kill literally everyone? And then they do like the happy thing, which if they did left out a funnier joke, I also would have been happier. Like him biting the cake, I was like, I understood that that's what happened when he did it. I was like, oh, but I didn't laugh at that like at all. I was like, that's not a funny joke to me. And then it ended and I was like, oh, that was a stinker of a joke, for like the final beat. So once again, like could have ended it on another like kind of dark note where it's like, they'll win, no worries. But he's freaked out now, like, oh crap, we did a good thing for sure for the quantum realm. All those people got liberated and then they're free, but they could also die, and then something else will happen, and then we'll all die, and then the whole universe and every other universe could die now. And then boom, the movie ends and it's like, whew, that's dark, but I'm excited. And then it doesn't, and it ends on a bad cake joke. So there's that. The second post-credit scene was super cool because I was like, does that mean Loki season 2 is coming out very soon? Because I really want to see Loki again, because that's still my favorite one as far as the shows are concerned. So looking forward to that. They're going to talk more about Kang. They show officially the TVA is in the quantum realm, right? Because they don't actually say it. I thought for sure Owen Wilson was going to like stroll past the screen for half a second, like, oh, this is it. Like if you look at the design, that's the TVA. Somewhere in that like weird city is the TVA. So that's why they're outside of time and space. They're in the quantum realm. And I was like, that's the answer. That's why they're outside of all of space and time. And that's why time works so differently there. Because, what was it? 5 hours was 5 years. And they're even further down than that, I would assume. So even less time. So I was like, okay, TVA. They don't officially say it, but it's like somewhere in there is the TVA for sure. So I was like, that's pretty cool. That's about it. Would love to know your thoughts on this one, so please put your comments down in the comment section below. I stream on my streaming channel, obviously. Link in the description below. Definitely check that out if you guys are interested. I would greatly appreciate it. Check out some of my other reviews. I'm reviewing The Bad Batch right now. I actually have to start reviewing Ruby because I can't believe that came back after like almost 2 full years. I'm also reviewing The Last of Us, of course, the video games. So definitely check out my reviews on that. Check out my streams. I do, high quality uploads here. So if you just want to catch up on it, you can, check out this channel. But if you want to catch me live, check out my streaming channel. So I'd really appreciate that. But we'd love to know what you guys thought about this movie. So please put your comments down in the comment section below. And of course, thanks for watching.